this country did better when black men were employed and not in prison.
I think hip hop will always be a voice for the people.
So we're here with Michael Render.
Yes.
Known to most as Killer Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking to the folks at Ambrosia for Heads and AFH TV.
You know what I love about Ambrosia for Heads? Ambrosia for Heads calls me my name and then says professionally every other major thing I did today. It's like, hey, Killer Mike. Like, you don't even sound right saying that shit, bro.
So Bill Scott Heron said the revolution will not be televised. Yeah. Apparently you did not get the memo. How does it feel to have made the most dangerous show on television right now?
That's a huge compliment, and it's one I can't accept by myself. And Daniel Weidenfeld is my partner on this. Is great. Vernon, who's also over at South Park, is great, and Nick Weidenfeld helps. I have a great team. My personal management team, Will, Joe, Meech, got a hell of a rap partner in L, and giving up a month of our touring to let me do it. So it's really a team effort, even down to my wife. So it feels great. I wanted to do something provocative. I wanted to do something amazing, but hearing you call it the world's most dangerous TV show is like the first time I heard NWA.
Yeah.
It makes me damn proud.
Absolutely. So the show is called Trigger Warning with Killer Mike.
Yeah.
And it's on Netflix, premiering on January 18th.
Yeah, Friday. Yeah.
How would you describe it? It's a trip.
The best description I could give, I gave in a quote that may have went out to you guys in the press, is if anarchists got to set the status quo. So, those were familiar with, anarchists like Eugene Debs and stuff. It's about educating yourself individually, freeing yourself of the nation or me, my team mentality, and really individually, taking in the world. It's about understanding that the only potential we have is infinite, and because your potential is infinite, you don't have to accept boxing, and you don't have to accept these are the two polar opposite arguments that we have, and allowing for clutter and confusion in the middle. Like Noam Chomsky talks about it, saying that you're given two viewpoints and then just this wide array of arguments in the middle. You don't have to do it. You can come up with these same arguments we have in a barbershop. What's the meme? If you can lead a gang, you can lead a business, and stuff. We took it and we applied it in the real world, and the results are what you'll see. I had an opportunity to go to a retirement community, talk to a bunch of old white folks, and some of the nicest people I've ever been in the world, totally open and gracious to me that day. And with that said, they're fed prejudice every day on television, so you got a chance to see in very open honesty, a woman who's as fucking sweet and adorable as my own grandmother get to say, because what she sees on the news, and that's from Fox or CNN, she believes black people to be essentially, shooters and killers and predators, and we do more of it. We know that's not true. Look at the FBI numbers not today. Robberies, she might have me on that, because poverty incites robbery. If you're not poor, you don't rob. If you're poor, you are. We know because of redlining and things of that nature, blacks essentially were forced into poverty. So yeah, you're going to get more snatch and grab, stolen cars, things of that nature. But in terms of the other stuff, we don't lead in crime, and it's only because of that little square on the wall that we're convinced otherwise. But the danger really isn't in just convincing white America. The danger is in it convinces you that's what you are. So that episode gave us an opportunity to break up those stereotypes and things of that nature. So I'm happy because even the episodes as we were doing them, they didn't turn out as I thought they would. I thought I was going in to tear Creflo down and destroy the mega church, kill the image of white Jesus. But Creflo isn't as big a problem as the real church. The real church is the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has essentially spread a westernized version of Christianity the world over. So they've taken white Jesus everywhere. They've taken white Jesus and candy and Bibles and Western politics, and so we have to start saying to ourselves, are we really in this to change the game for real, or are we selective? So it forced me to have to deal with some of my bigotry and prejudices. I'm a guy. I like women, so I was not as progressive when it came to homosexuality years ago. I had two gay uncles who were great to me. I grew up understanding that gay people are here. So when given the opportunity to make pornography, it was important to us that we made all kind of pornography. You know what I'm saying? Something for everyone. And that was me having to face my own prejudices. Now, I didn't stick around for any of the porno scenes, But I made sure I hired a sex positive therapist who was a black woman to come and oversee it and make sure it was, it was all the way around, good for all people, no matter what they like, So
that's great.
It forced me though, and that's what good television does.
Yeah.
And I want to make good TV.
So they showed that part in the trailer, so it's not giving anything away. You just talked about it. You was talking to this older woman, and you just hit her with all these facts, and no matter what you say, you can't change it. So we live in a post-fact world. Everyone is stuck with the narratives they tell themselves. How do you make change?
They're not stuck with the narratives they tell themselves.
So how do you?
They're stuck with the narratives they're being told.
Okay.
If CNN and Fox formulate an opinion and they give it to you on Monday, by Friday all your friends are going to be on either side of that opinion, and they're going to say the same trigger words. If you say Bernie Sanders, they say socialist. I argued with Whoopi Goldberg today, and she vehemently called Bernie Sanders a socialist. And I'm thinking to myself, Auntie, you came up with comic relief. You fucking Billy Crystal, fucking Robin Williams, there's no more socialist idea than feeding the poor. You know what I'm saying? We have free lunch in America in public schools because a socialist organization called the Black Panthers fed people. So even hearing her, who works on television, be programmed. She said this was a bad thing. Socialism works in the black community all the fucking time. Your auntie helps your mom, who helps your auntie. Like, we aren't raised, we haven't taken proper advantage of capitalism. You know what I'm saying? So to hear her say it to help me understand no one's above the programming, even me. So I think people are given opinions. Like Noam Chomsky says, you're given two different views, and you're given all this space to argue those views, but you're never allowed to step outside of a box, or you're never allowed to step out and say, well, there's a tertiary thing. There's a third thing. There's another way of looking at this. There's another perspective. You aren't allowed to stand up and play chess and look at the board this way. You have to play from your side. And I think that's how you lose.
A lot of people might think that you were a socialist. You affiliated with Bernie. You talked about reallocation of wealth.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about the 99% versus the 1%.
Yeah.
But you also are very pro-black business, pro-black wealth.
Absolutely.
So how would you describe your economics?
And I'm a millionaire.
Yep.
It's important to say that.
Yep.
Because I don't want kids who listen to Dead Prez to think, and listen to Killer Mike from the Jews to think that there's no money underground rap. Absolutely there is. You have to be more disciplined. You got to take care of yourself. But, my friends do pretty good. Mortal Technique ain't starving. You know what I'm saying? So being an American, you have to learn how to become a business person if you're going to live within this system. Right? I'm not saying there's not a greater system. Jacques Fresco and the Venus Project are trying to create a world without money. I'm all for it in theory, but for right now, an early 40-something-year-old man has to make sure his wife and children are taken care of, so I have to participate in capitalism. Try to make sure my capitalism is a more compassionate version of capitalism, but it is capitalism. I'm here to make money. I sat with Andrew Young yesterday. For those that don't know, he's a former U.S. ambassador. He's a former mayor of Atlanta. He was a direct lieutenant with Dr. King. So he helped organize the marches, got out there with him at SCLC. His wife was my direct mentor, Jean Charles Young. And he talked about having war bonds as a child, buying war bonds, and how his mom bought him war bonds, and how when he graduated high school, those bonds bought his first car. My grandmother bought me Coca-Cola stock in kindergarten. By the time I went to Morehouse, I graduated, that stock had grown. So there's something in capitalism if you live in the system for you, and you should take full advantage of it. I don't mind some socialist ideas and principles. They make sense. Free school makes sense to me. Free health care, I'm willing to pay a little more in taxes for, because I would like for people to have the ability to go to the doctor, dentist, and take their child should they need to be. The Black Panthers, like I say, created the free breakfast program, where kids wouldn't be eating and able to focus in class. So there are some proponents. I'm for by any means necessary for real. What really works? What gives people an opportunity to get poverty and crime and war out of their life, and gives them the ability to connect with one another to grow the beloved community that Dr. King talked about. I don't think that has to be without capitalism. I don't think it has to, because I'm not fond of communism either. But it does have to be with willful intent to do that.
So on the show, speaking of Coca-Cola, you start off with a lot of premises that seem to be outlandish, right? Making crippled cola.
Yeah.
But then it's chock full of very sound and practical advice.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the strategies of how you went about planning the shows and kind of mapping those out?
I love that people, like, you got people in your life you give good advice to, and then they don't take it, and then you'll see them put up a meme of someone saying the exact same thing a week later. You know what I'm saying? Like Gary Vee, who's a partner of mine. Like, I got a friend, right? I'll give her a piece of advice on Monday. She might read it, might not. she'll post the Gary V shit. I was like, you know, Gary's a homeboy of mine. I told you the same goddamn thing, stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like, what I picked up and what I learned is that, you know, everyone says they want to change and things of that nature, but it's uncomfortable doing it, and you have to push yourself. You have to go. You have to try. You cannot not try, or you can. But you know, for me, it's important to push. It's important to do shit. It's important to stay positive. So I don't even remember what the question was as much as.
It was about how you weave the practical.
Oh, the practical is this. Coca-Cola was started by a Confederate soldier, and there was cocaine in it, and it didn't do well from a business standpoint its first year. So if a defender of a nation at that time, you know, the South, wanted to keep people enslaved and wanted to have their own market, you know, if a defender of that also having a drink with a narcotic in it, and it failing the first couple of years, if they can create the most powerful soft drink company in the world, I'd be damned in the age of craft beers and my white homeboys making beer in their tub if I can't get 4 Crips together and make soda in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. If you can cook crack, you can make a soda. You know? And I refuse to think that the things that we've learned in the streets are only limited to the streets. Mm-hmm. I've learned how to do business selling cocaine. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to business school. And I learned some very hard lessons, and that's not to clarify or glorify. That's just to say I learned very practically. You buy a $50 slab. If you try to cut it into 10 rocks, that's going to be too small. So the competition on the block next to you is going to eat you up. So you better cut it to 7 or 8, make your profit quick, turn around, buy your $100 slab, do the same thing to a quarter, and get up to a house. Very simple. I think that taking those young men, because the only person who's already a business person was Yale. Yale already, he really does get out in the neighborhood, sell his wares and stuff, and not drugs. Like he sells clothing. He has a cash crop clothing company. The other 3 had no business experience. You have to put people on what they call the death ground. You got to do or die. You got to put them out there. You can't want to be rich. You got to say, I'm going to be rich. You can't want to open a business. You have to say, I'm going to open a business. You know, my DJ started Rap Fan Clothing Company. He started it really just designing something on his computer. Same T-shirt for 2 years, and before you know it, started selling more and more and more. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. So from a very practical standpoint, you know, what I've learned, my wife is brilliant in business. You know, her mind moves 100 times with mine. When I tell my wife I have an idea, she's already getting a business license online in the middle of the night. You know, you get with people that force you to grow, that force you to think. On a very practical level, what can I really do from the point I am, and let me do that. Let me do that well. Right. You know, Alex Gitwan is one of the most famous promoters and club owners in Atlanta. I knew Alex when he parked cars at Ethiopian Vibes. He took that money, he started promoting his own parties. Next thing you know, he's hosting Puffy and Bad Boy, the Tungeon family, G-Unit, and everyone else. Now he is the preeminent promoter in Atlanta. Well, 20 years ago, he was parking cars. Alex wasn't thinking 20 days or 20 months. He was thinking 20 years ahead. You know, so for me, from a business perspective, I started my first barbershop, started doing booth rent, and started realizing this ain't really the way. I'm never going to make more money than they want to pay me. So me and my wife added retail. How do I add retail to a barbershop? Or how do I turn a barbershop, instead of a barbershop, turn it into a retail experience and a social experience that people want to come to? We do that. We perfect that. Next thing you know, we're in New York a couple of years later, we get a call from the Atlanta Hawks. We'd like you to put one in our arena. Based on doing the good work. Not based on wanting to do good work or dreaming of doing good work. Doing good work, you know. So, you know, very practically, I took those young men, we YouTubed and a few other things and got some advice on how to make soda. These young men really went and made a soda. They really took it to market, in this case the farmer's market. They really did well. And we are in the process of bringing that to the market regionally and nationally now.
That's fantastic. So you go after a lot of sacred cows. You know, Jesus is white.
White Jesus.
Money is green. How did you pick the topics that you wanted to attack?
It's all barbershop stuff, man. It's all stuff we've heard arguing in barbershops our whole life. It's just a working man's voice. I view my show as that. Like, you know, everything else is too contrived and too calculated, too full of bullshit. No one is really hitting the ground. You know, I remember when I liked Geraldo Rivera before he became just an asshole who took his shirt off to try to make women think he's sexy on Fox and shit. Back when he was just like an asshole reporter searching for the truth. You know, that's what he presented himself as. He just used to be obnoxious about pushing the line. I think we needed a nice, obnoxious guy. I can push the line a little bit, but I'm going to do it with a smile, but I want us to get uncomfortable. We don't have to stay sedentary. We don't have to accept these are the rules. They were like this when I was 10. It's going to be like this when I'm 30. It shouldn't have taken homosexuals 30 years to gain their rights to marry. It should have been done in 3. We shouldn't be talking progressively about AIDS research and the progression of that now. Reagan should have been doing that while he was president instead of vilifying homosexuality. As an African-American man, we've only been free 55 years. It's no reason that we shouldn't be vigorously participating in capitalism, trying to catch up with the 350 years that we denied the opportunity to do so. So I don't tell you, fuck the system, take it down, because after you say fuck the system, take it down, how you going to feed the people? I try to provide solution-based. After every single show, you are given an opportunity to see a solution. You want to end gang warfare, then you need to introduce economics. If we went into another country and you had 2 rival factions fighting, and both of the factions' leaders were in jail, we would free those leaders, cut a deal with those leaders, and end violence between that faction so that country can repair itself. So my question becomes, why are Larry Hoover and Jeff Fort in jail and serving 23 hours a day in a cell when they could be in the same room participating in helping end violence between the vice lords and the gangs of disciples nationally? Well, if that happens, you don't need police raid units. You don't need military-like vehicles. From a friend of mine who owns a 501c3 that deals specifically with Crip gangs, he says after they negotiate, mediate, and get violence to go down, their funding always gets taken. Violence rises back up, their funding comes back, they get back on their job. You know what I'm saying? So there's something become very pervasive and pornographic almost about crime needing to happen. So as Jeff Sessions says, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant right of law having, being involved in law enforcement so that can continue. So at some point we're just eating our young and feeding off our babies. We have to come up with an alternative method.
So post 9/11, military presence is much heavier. Airports, train stations, the streets, police become militarized. What do you think?
They already were, I would argue.
So
in our communities they were.
They were.
The Red Dog units in Atlanta.
The equipment,
Absolutely.
Why do you think it is that we've become so comfortable being so close to martial law?
I don't know, but that's why I won't give up my guns. I am a proponent for owning firearms as an American first, and as an African American especially. We've only been free 55 years, so I don't understand why we're comfortable when we say, oh man, Hitler's our president. I don't understand why we're comfortable de-arming and giving the guns back to Hitler's administration.
Well, that's the thing that people forget about the Second Amendment. It's really so that people could form militias
if they need
to rebel against a tyrannical government.
That's why we're Americans. We're Americans.
People forget about that part.
Well, people don't forget shit. People are programmed not to.
Okay.
People see the news, and the news tells them this is how you're supposed to think, and then they think like that, and then they repeat that, and they think it's their idea. But that's not your idea. That's an idea you've been given. Miss Ellison had one leg, wore a mushroom hairstyle, and was mean as a fucking rattlesnake. Taught me to love the preamble and Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. And I refuse to, only 55 years into freedom, to give up any of those rights. I think blacks that are arguing on the behalf of any organization saying we need to introduce more gun laws need to understand that whenever laws are introduced, they're introduced to bring us, or they usually affect us worse than first. And I think that your time would be better served trying to get the 13th Amendment amended to end slavery. Because if you end the excuse to lock black men up for nonviolent drug offenses for 20, 30 years, what you get is, instead of men locked away and your boys running rampant in their neighborhood, now you actually have male role models with business minds to open businesses and do things. I think the marijuana market should open up to those businesses. I think 35, like in the state of Georgia, 35% African American, 35% of the marijuana dispensaries need to be African American. 35% of our state funding needs to be in African American banks. That's the way, to me, you cycle and take care of. But people don't have opinions. People are given opinions. People, a person will tell you who a report on their local news station is, and they couldn't identify Noam Chomsky out of a picture. They couldn't identify John H. Clark and Eugene Debs. I was in the airport on the way up here and saw, what's my man, Tim Weiss? Is it Tim Wise or Weiss? What's Tim's last name? He's like a male white Jane Elliott, speaks against white supremacy. Saw him, just looked down like, shoot, people walking by. This man is out fighting. Now, it's the blackest airport in America. He's out fighting on our behalf every day. We walk by like we didn't even know who he was. So, because the news isn't telling you that he's the guy. The news is telling you to hate Trump and polarize you. So for me, people need to deprogram themselves. People need to get out and meet people who don't look like them, who are not of their religion, and they need to fraternize and congregate with those people. You know, because that puts you on the ground of interpersonally diminishing some of the thoughts and the prejudices and bigotry you have in your own heart, as well as other people.
So you say Georgia's 35% black.
Yeah, 35% African.
And in your first episode, you really challenged yourself for 60 hours to buy black and keep money in the black community. So how would you, if that was a challenge in Athens and Atlanta, how would you advise someone in markets with far smaller percentages of black folks to keep their money black?
Really what I'm saying when I say black is most people live around people that look like them. So, some white guys pretend to get offended when I say bank black or pink black. And I say pretend to get offended because you don't really care enough. You're not really mad. You're just yelling at me via the Twitter. What I'm really saying is local, right? My vegetables as a child came off the back of the vegetable truck, which came through my neighborhood. My eggs came either from my neighbor's yard, directly from their chickens, or off the vegetable truck. Now, my wife drives 30, 40 minutes to Whole Foods. I never go to Whole Foods because I'm not going to drive 40 minutes to a neighborhood that's not mine to give money to a tax base that doesn't care about my side of town when that corporation could simply put a Whole Foods in my side of town. You get what I'm saying? I never go to Whole Foods. I never will. I'd rather drive 50 minutes to the farmer's market than go to Whole Foods because I know you're purposely denying us that. You know what I mean? So, for me, man, it's just about there's somewhere a mindset and a groupthink that's going to change things radically that way. And if you don't believe me, we're sitting here on Apple computers, and you don't have to have two cameramen with you to do this. I need to be the forerunner for that mindset. I need to open and clear the way for that. I think, like Pac said, I might not change the world, but I'm gonna spark the mind that does. You know, I am a result of Tupac, and hopefully the results of me will further push and progress us.
So in that same episode, you said that the country is better when black people are strong.
We are.
Why is
Absolutely.
that?
I mean, look at us. Look at us prior to desegregation. Alonzo Herndon started the Atlanta Life Insurance Company. The Atlanta Life Insurance Company was started because he had a barbershop that only serviced the white business class. All black barbers, but serviced the white business class. He learned about insurance policy, stock funds, things of that nature. Next thing you know, he's doing that for the black community. The black community all of a sudden creates one of the strongest insurance companies in the United States, and not just black people getting insured at that point. When you look at small black banks, right? If we look at East Indian populations coming in and opening gas stations, bodegas, and things like that throughout the South, right? Those loans aren't coming from national banks. Those loans aren't coming from Chase and Bank of America. Those loans are coming from Carver. Those loans are coming from One United, Citizens Trust. Our churches are going to get loans, but our businesses aren't. So what I'm saying is, when we get ourselves financially ready as individuals, financially ready as communities, financially ready and strong, our communities are stronger and the bigger community becomes stronger. Right? The bigger community is stronger when hotels, like the one I think that opened down in New Orleans, two brothers opened a hotel. So I don't have to necessarily stay at a big chain. I can stay at that hotel, increase, that's still 50 jobs. Whether it's Howard Johnson, their hotel, still 50 people that are employed. So for me, I believe individually I'm better when I take care of myself financially. I know that my community becomes better when I circulate my dollar. Right now, our dollar circulates 6 hours in our community. In other communities, it circulates 11 times, 20 and 23 times, 28 times, right? 6 hours in our community, and that dollar's gone. And once that dollar's gone, it's gone, right? And you're decimated. That's killing more of you than gang members. Only thing might kill more of you is Coca-Cola itself. You know what I'm saying? And diabetes. But that's what's killing us. And this country did better when black men were employed and not in prison. Our families were more secure. It's hard as a man to look at a woman and a child you can't support every day. What's that? That's going to drive you out into the streets doing dumb shit. Drug use, drug selling, abusing your children, because you don't walk around with the pride of knowing I'm a provider. You know what I'm saying? Your children are bored. They aren't learning trades and skills early enough, so they're having sex, creating more teen kids when they could be building things. You know what I mean? So for me, if you look at our communities prior to desegregation, prior to our dollar being able to just escape, prior to us, essentially breaking up the black family, if you look at us, we were a stronger community financially. Like, I remember learning the people that got hung, right? You see people hung from trees and stuff, those old pictures. Those people weren't just victims that would just happen to be walking down the road, two white guys pick them up and kill them. Those people were leaders in their community. They were pillars. Medgar Evers wasn't killed because he was a sucker. He was killed because he stood up. He was killed because he thought his way. He fought his way. So for me, I think that that's the best way for us. The greater community is better when our community is better. The greater community is stronger when our community is stronger. And financially, this country does better when African Americans are participating in the economic process in a meaningful way.
So people and the country are stronger, and the dollar and financial empowerment does that. There have been a lot of marches, protests, hashtag protests over the last couple of years, but one thing that seems to have been neglected is the boycott. What do you think, and even when people try to do it with the NFL, they haven't been able to sustain it. What do you think has been so difficult for our generation, our era, to sustain boycotts?
It was difficult to sustain a boycott then. Yeah, boycotts ain't easy, Boycotts are not easy, but boycotts are necessary. Jean Charles Young, the late wife of Andrew Young, was my direct mentor. They boycotted in the early 70s, and you saw her with a sign. I still have a picture of her with a sign that says, if you don't need it, like if it's not toiletries, feminine products, do not buy it. Make these stores. As a business owner now, when people say, oh man, they had a 20% reduction in profit, doesn't sound like much to you, because 20% to you is 20 cents out of $1. To me, that might be $2,000 out of 10, 20 out of 100. That's significant. You get what I'm saying? So I don't know why the boycott isn't as effective today, but I know Dick Gregory. I knew him the last 3 years of his life. And the first time me and T.I. talked to him, he cursed us out something good, man. I mean, he cussed our ass out. He cussed us out so bad, Tip hung up, called me back and see what he had to say. But he told us that if you keep trying to use our old methods, you're going to continue to be ineffective. What this system has been great at is matching and mastering and matching your methods, right? So you want to boycott. You used to boycott. You boycott the buses and shut the whole town down because no one was expecting that. Now you do it, and they'll do free bus day. You know what I'm saying? And we've become so self-absorbed, it's not worth the long haul. My grandmother walked 5 miles, to nursing school and 5 miles back because she was determined to be in solidarity. And you hear that now. You say, I couldn't do that, but you do a 5K in the mornings when you're gym. Like, these people were just determined. I think that I don't think we really want freedom all the time. I think we want comfortable servitude or manageable slavery. Freedom means I'm responsible for myself. Freedom means fuck your bus, I'll walk. Freedom means after I saw that girl get hit at McDonald's by that white man, first of all, if I ever see him, it's on sight. You know what I mean? For feeling as though that woman is property for you to put your hands on. But I can guarantee you this, you'll never see me in a picture with a big man. Unless it's a black-owned McDonald's. You're never going to see. That company failed her. So me personally, I remember when Tip and others boycotted Houston's restaurant. They called me. I was like, shit, I ain't ate at Houston's in 3 years. They treated me bad. Fuck them. So I carry grudges against corporations a little longer. But I think as a collective, if we did that, we'd be much more effective, progressing quicker.
So maybe things have gotten a little easier. So we're comfortable with that.
They're pure easier.
Right. Yeah. So another thing, you talked about getting past your differences. You've encouraged the proletariat to see past their differences.
Got to
connect.
Got to.
What circumstances do you think need to change in order to foster that situation?
I don't know, because people argue over shit like what's white privilege and whether those arguments are whack and lame. I know for a fact, I was talking to Senator Sanders, talking to the OG, and he said, Mike, at the time of the Civil Rights Movement, when the Civil Rights Movement was targeting Mississippi to essentially emancipate, right? White workers were the most against Dr. King in terms of workers' rights and civil rights, right? Working class white men. But they were the least paid of the worker class, period, in the nation. So if you look at the NFL essentially has the worst guaranteed contracts of any of the sports, right? You get crippled, your check stops tomorrow, right? Skip Bayless, who staunchly appears to be conservative on television, Skip said, the players are looking at this wrong. This is not a race issue, it's a trade issue. And if all these players stood in solidarity, they would break the stranglehold the NFL has on their contracts instantly. Instantly they would break it. and they would get better contracts like baseball, like basketball, things of that nature. But because it feels good to be a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant person in America, I don't give a fuck what you say, because you won. The nation is based on you. The nation is based on the idea of alpha masculinity you have. You know, the military is almost to the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant man in the Midwest. The military is like the church in the black church in the South. Fucking nothing makes you prouder than Jesus and a goddamn gun and an American flag. But if you can't get past that mentality to say I'm going to show solidarity with Colin Kaepernick because it's his as an American and as a black American he has the right to do this, has nothing to do with this football. If you don't do that, then you're hurting yourself essentially. So that's what I'm seeing. You know, there's a meme going around. It looks really corny, of like a white guy with a rebel flag and a black guy with like a panther suit stereotypically. They're coming together and they're saying, well, this is what they really fear. Well, it really is the truth. The masters fear the proletariat. At the time the Civil War happened, there were three classes of people in the South. You had the planter class, which were the rich. Then you had the white peasant, who were the people who oversaw and worked for the rich. And lastly, you had black people. Right? So there's never been, but it feels good to feel like I'm in the power base. It feels good to say, you know, to hear Jeff Sessions say that law enforcement is a part of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant history in this country. Nigga, the law don't give a shit about you either. Because if there ain't no black people in North Alabama, they just don't lock up poor white people. Yeah. Just like they put black people on the west side of Atlanta now, they put all the white people out of Cabbagetown first. No one raised any irony about it. No one raised hell on the behalf of those poor white people. They got pushed out of the middle of the city. You know. But we should have been. We should have been in solidarity with them. Mm-hmm. And a few of us who were ignored. Yeah. You know?
A lot of times when that unity happens is when it gets dangerous. That's when Malcolm got killed. Yeah. That's when Martin got killed. Bacon's Rebellion.
And they got killed for making international ties and demands. Martin was killed for speaking against the war. Against war. He was killed for speaking against poverty, for getting bigger than they thought he should get. Right? Nigga, your job is to get niggas on the bus in Birmingham. Nigga, your job is not to speak against the Vietnam War and to eradicate poverty by helping workers understand that you're a class. When you look at Malcolm, the person that he met, I think was in Kenya, was it Nino Pino? I forgot his homeboy's name. His homeboy was killed a couple of weeks later. He and Malcolm were trying to take the United States to the United Nations. So people say, oh, Louis Farrakhan. I'm sorry, brother. Nobody who wears a bow tie and sells paper has the power to rent the Ultimate Ballroom a week before him. No one has the power to put snipers in a battle. No one has that power in the United States government. You know, the United States government has found guilty of conspiring to kill Martin Luther King. You know, Dick Gregory talked about these things before he left, but we're taking all our information from the box of the news. You know, and we're not taking it from people who learned who are there. And that's the travesty of this. You know,
absolutely. So coming back to the show for a second. Do you think this is the first show ever that went from school children to pornography and no crime was committed?
Yeah. Definitely not the Catholic Church. I set out because I think that I admire what I've heard about schools in Japan. Kids come to school, they have to clean up their own space, they learn accountability and responsibility. Right? We come to school and the school is just something we're at. Just leave it for the janitors. That hasn't always been that way. And in kindergarten, we had to clean up after ourselves. There was structure and order that made me self-accountable. We've lost some of that, and in losing that, we've lost some of the things in our schools like shop, auto mechanics, aviation and aviation mechanics. All these were in school when I was in school. I was in school 20, 25 years ago, right? And we're losing that. We're now pushing children who might not even want to go to regular college into regular college, taking up debt, pushing them into the military. But we're pushing them away from trades and skills we need. We need builders. We need drivers. And if you're not pushing kids to that, then what are you doing? So people think it's funny when, Chris Rock says to people, y'all tell your children they can be anything. You tell them to be practical. But that's for real. I'm not saying my kids can't be anything. I'm a fucking rapper. I remember my dad's face when I told him I want to be an artist. Man, they call it starving artists for a reason. You know what I'm saying? But my uncle who knew how to build decks never not had a job. My uncle who worked on cars I bought a garage from his wife. You know, like my uncles who knew how to do stuff with their hands never were broke, never were poor. They still read books. They still used fancy words and all that other stuff, but they weren't broke. And many of our problems stem from economics. So, in the episode you're talking about, I first go to school kids and their principals like, yo, let's dump all the algebra stuff and let's figure out how to teach these kids how to build stuff. And the teachers frankly told me no. And then I say maybe I should take it to adults. I went and talked to some unemployed adults and found out unemployment, you used to have to go down there and look for jobs. Now you just kind of at the crib, and more likely than not, you're looking at Brazzers,
Right.
or RedTube,
Right. So speaking of that, you mentioned also that more people spend time per month on porn sites than on Amazon,
Yep.
Google, and Netflix
Yep.
combined. So why do you think it's still so taboo?
People like fucking, and people don't like admitting they're fucking. People, it's like, if you want a woman to be the wildest, freakiest, nastiest, wildest thing in your life ever, you can't ever tell anybody she is. If you want, you know what I mean, that's like Lil Duval talks about that. Like, man, you can get all kind of hoisms to happen as long as you keep your fucking mouth shut. And that's kind of how pornography are. We all are the most. You can't fight primal nature. We're here as a species simply to reproduce. That's what every species is here to do, to make sure the species, your body's job every day is to try to live, not die. So part of that is sex is for the procreation of the species. It's hard to fight not wanting to have sex. And if I got an extra 15 minutes before the next interview, I'm probably gonna fuck off and see what's shaking on World Star, or Ambrosia, or Brazzers, or whoever has tits and ass. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
That sells Coca-Cola and Cadillacs. You know what I mean?
It does.
That's never going to stop. So
Yeah.
for me, teaching people or getting them interested in something by using primal nature makes all the sense in the world.
Right. Okay. Just a couple more questions. So you're a staunch advocate of the First Amendment.
I am.
How do you feel about the cancel culture that's evolved? Where
I just found out there was an
Yeah.
interview before this.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I mean, basically, where people are, persecuted for things they've done in the past, and
yeah.
not allowed to grow. And
Chomsky's talked about that too. And people, please Google some of these names I'm saying, because I don't have all the answers, but I'll be goddamn vain. Read a lot of good books. There's a danger in wanting to take away someone's right to speak, because they came for the women, I said nothing. They came for blacks, I said nothing. They came for the Jews, I said nothing. And when they came for me, there was no one to speak up. I believe in the United States Constitution and things like the First Amendment for the people I don't like as much as I do for myself. The rules have to apply to everyone. That's all the civil rights movement has really been about. That I want my equal shot at what I was promised by the United States Constitution and the freedom that was given to me simply by being born. So for me, I'm not in agreement with a culture that says, I don't like what you're saying, so I would like to do away with you. Because, on our money are warmongers and rapists and killers and murderers. This is a genocidal maniac on the $20 bill. He paid to have the scalps of Indians brought in and paid a bounty on them. Indigenous Americans, natives, don't even carry 20s, some of them, because they hate this man so much. We don't talk about him like he's Hitler. We celebrate him. He's on our money. We put him up in rap videos and put it to our ear. So when I'm thinking is we have to, my thinking is that we can do things differently, but we can do them quickly because we know the right thing to do. So that's everyone gets their rights, even if I don't like what they're saying, or we can just slowly progress it until everyone is shut up, and all of a sudden only the government can talk, and only government approved things, and you get crazy shit like in the UK. You can't say things because they're hateful or hate speech. I don't need the biggest proliferator of Western culture. I don't need a country or an empire that still profits and keeps the remains from slavery to tell me it's rude to say some shit. And if you start depending on the government to do that, you'll soon be a slave again.
Absolutely. So black people, unarmed black people, are still being killed by the police.
And white. Yeah.
And white. The wealth gap is still increasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Climate change is still happening.
Yeah.
Yet people are still more focused on Trump tweets, Kanye shenanigans,
Yeah.
and R. Kelly. How do we keep people focused and not distracted?
I don't know, man. I call my good brother Kanye dumb on the interview, but I don't think that I think we're fed dumbness. We're fed ignorance. And it's almost become pornographic to see people rise and fall. As we watch it like pornography, we're waiting on them to slip. We're waiting on Kim to do something we don't like. We're waiting. And while we're waiting to tear each other down, essentially what we've become is a scarlet letter society. We've become a society that waits for you to make a mistake, that drags you to the middle of town, that puts a scarlet letter on you or burns you at the stake while we all cheer you on. So as you're cheering on the destruction of other people, I need you to look at old lynch mob photos. When you look at those old lynch mob photos, you're looking at picnics. You're looking at normal people looking at a dead carcass hanging. That's what we're doing to one another now online. Versus, I've heard in African culture, pre-Western, when someone did something wrong, depending on the tribe or kingdom, they put you in the middle of a circle and they tell you all the good you had did in your life. My manager Joe says, tell your children that you're proud of them. I'm proud of, say, Kanye's attempts. Some stuff to me, you need to sit down and say, I'm gonna let Mr. Jim Brown talk because he's been doing this shit 50 years. But if you get access to the White House and you can affect some change, hey. But it might be a little dumb to think that love is going to conquer politics and wearing a hat is going to endear to you. I don't think that's smart. I think sitting down with a list of demands is smart. To say, hey, this is what my community's been denied. This is what we have the opportunity to do right now through executive orders or through legislative change. This is what we expect out of you. This is what we're willing to give you in return. That's what you do, because that's what politics is.
Absolutely. You started off the interview by saying you don't say, I'm going to do something. You actually do it.
You just do it. You have to do it.
So how long has it been since you've been working on this show?
10 years. It took us 10 years to bring it to market.
Yeah.
And we did other shit. Like, I've made records. We've done other, TV appearances and stuff, Daniel and I, but we tried to be tammy. And it became better and better with each version. From our hypothesis of what it could be, from our first demo version that we did to FX, and now it became better each time. So again, when you sit down and say to me, "Smoke Stage on television," I'm almost overwhelmed because that's what I wanted to do. But 10 years ago, I couldn't have promised you to be in the same show. I wasn't the same Michael. I wasn't, one of my best friends in the world wasn't a white guy who's the best producer and rapper in the world. I wasn't forced to be in a culture that mixed me with everyone. You know what I'm saying? I had to grow. And because I grew, I came with a product that was better. So I encourage growth. When I talk at colleges, I encourage children, black or white or any other race, creed, or color, to get outside of this institution, to find a child within this community to mentor, to replace you in your seat once you graduate.
All right, last question. Since you mentioned the white guy who's one of the best producers in the world, what can you tell us about Run the Jewels for?
I absolutely think LP is the best rapper producer in the world because I see him write his own raps and I know he makes his own beats. Right. And from Run the Jewels 4, you can expect some kick your ass, punch you in the face, hardcore fucking hip hop.
Awesome. Killer Mike, Michael Render.
Yeah.
Bringing forth the show on January 18th.
Yeah.
Trigger warning.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the compliment.
Absolutely.
Love.